Figure Force is the code name for a group of daring, middle-aged, highly obsessed toy vloggers. Its purpose, to bring toy reviews and nostalgia to YouTube and Instagram, video sharing websites that allow users to upload, view, share and comment. Hi, I'm Rudy Zissou, and this is the Arashikage clan. Two of the most well-known and prolific characters within the Arashikage clan are Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes. Before we get into each character and their representative figures from the G.I. Joe classified line, I've got to tell you, I had zero interest in these characters growing up. To be honest, I didn't even think I knew what a ninja was until the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles broke onto the scene in 87, 88. No idea. I knew about Snake Eyes, but I think I saw him more as the commando, the alpha commando, Snake Eyes. But again, not that much interest. It's only been, I'd say, the last 5-6 years that I've exponentially grown to love both these characters and seen them in a brand new light. I had my favourites as a kid, and they were way more military based. I love Bazooka, Gung-Ho, and then I kind of liked characters like Alpine. And obviously when it comes to Cobra, I love the Dreadnoks. So yeah, these two just didn't really, I just didn't pay any attention to them. And it's only been, as I said recently, rewatching some of the older cartoons, seeing episodes that I'd never seen before, and catching up with a few old comics, that I realised how well written the characters are, and especially later on within, the realms of Action Force, International Heroes and G.I. Joe, that they really developed these characters so much further than they did back then. Snake Eyes barely even appears in Action Force the movie. I think he has like 2 scenes, the opening credits, and he punches a couple of goons in Cobra La. But I think they are wonderful characters, and the G.I. Joe classified toy line has done both these characters absolute justice. Let's take a look at Snake Eyes first. Starting with the box. As you can see, I have left his weapons and backpack still in the box. I will get onto that later. But this is the unique thing with G.I. Joe Classified compared to, say, the Lightning Collection or Transformers, is each box has its own signature artwork done by a different artist every time. And it's one of my favourite parts of collecting, is seeing people's interpretation of characters through various mixed media. Some are hit and miss, that's for sure, and I like some, and I like some a lot, and some I could not care at all about. And sadly, Snake Eyes is one that I'm really not fussed with, which is a huge shame because it's boring. And yet the character of Snake Eyes is not boring in the slightest. But I just don't get anything from the image. I get that they've kept it kind of, the colour palette just black and red, which is, the clan logo is in red. Snake Eyes tends to be all black. There is obviously various versions of Snake Eyes, and this one I refer to as version 2 Snake Eyes, with the first one being the Alpha Commando, and then version 3 had the silver or the grey helmet. But it doesn't do absolutely anything for me. It's just a bit lackluster. Oh well. onto the weapons. As you can see, I have not used these weapons. So the silencer is pretty good and it attaches onto that handgun, but they are just far too futuristic, too sci-fi for me, which I get it. Sometimes you want your figures to be toyetic, and it definitely, it does that well, but they are too far in the realms of science fantasy for me. When it comes to military figures, I like a sense of realism, and the use of kind of real or close to real guns is more in keeping with what I like, say the use of a submachine gun or an Uzi. And then the backpack, I don't use the backpack because it's slightly cumbersome for the figure. And again, version 2 Snake Eyes I see as the ninja as opposed to the commando, and the backpack feels commando style. Then onto the back, because this is the very first wave, as you can see he has the different grey silver helmet, which if you have the colour change Zartan, you can have that head. As you can see, you've got the first lot, the first wave with characters that they've been modernised. So Roadblock is slightly different, Gung-Ho's a bit different, but it's still a cool image, and that's the kind of the standard imagery. And then you get to see some vehicles. Will they get made? Yeah, we'll see. So, Snake Eyes then. And considering it's from the first wave, he's incredibly faithful to the original look of the toy. But obviously with that slight bit of modernisation. On the original toy, we're talking about 3 3/4 figures with moulded detail. But you did have moulded detail of grenades, which obviously that's now a bandolier. So the grenades can be moved around. And they've added accents of silver for his belt buckle, and obviously the red of the Arashikage clan on the belt and the top. As you can see, I have switched out his weapons. So I have given him some weapons from a Valaverse accessories weapons pack. So I've given him a silver pistol, again, just to add a bit of depth and a bit of a change, and to also accentuate the silver detail. And I've given him a semi-automatic submachine gun, which is way more in keeping with Snake Eyes. I've given it the snubbed barrel. A lot of the time you'll see Snake Eyes with an Uzi 9mm, but I want to kind of save that for his Alpha Commando version. So yeah, he's now got the semi-automatic submachine gun, and then obviously with his standard blade. I think they've really captured Snake Eyes beautifully. There's moulded detail on his pants. The body armour shows how kind of muscular he is and adds to that kind of beefiness of G.I. Joe. When you look back at G.I. Joe characters, they're so muscular, and even though he is body armoured up, everything is proportioned perfectly for Snake Eyes, and you can get these figures into some incredible poses. Sheathing his sword, popping his handgun and knife into his hands, recreating some iconic imagery from various posters and cartoon panels. The silver handgun for me just absolutely brings out the colour of the belts and the buckles, and it really adds that extra dimension to the figure. As you can see, that there's excellent knee and ankle pivots just to give dynamicism to the figure. When I got him, it was my hope that it could dual hand his sword, and as you can see, absolutely does not disappoint. holds the handle perfectly with both hands. And again, you can just get signature Snake Eyes poses, double-handing his sword. Considering these characters, or these versions are, you know, monochromatic in black and white, they just... vibrancy is not the right word. They just have an aura of them that surrounds them, and you just know how stealthy and well versed in the martial arts the characters are. And finally, it'd be rude of me to not show him in a commando variant, so I've added the backpack. His space gun actually fits onto the backpack, and I've added his space pistol and space silencer together to give him a more commando look. For some people, that could totally be your Snake Eyes, the commando, but with this head and these weapons. But perhaps my thoughts have changed a little bit now that I've put it together, because it's not something that I've actually done. It's not too bad, and I'm pleasantly surprised how it does lose some of the overly futuristic elements to it once he's commandoed up. That's a revelation. Figure Force will return after these messages.
The evil Crimson Twins, Zaymot and Tomax, have located the Action Force Devilfish base.
Let's hit them, Tomax!
With the ultra-fast Cobra Hydra sled. But the Devilfish snap into action.
It's an ambush, Zaymot! Give them a torpedo! Full force!
But the evil twin brothers have one last trick up their sleeve.
We'll be back!
Cobra Hydra sled, Crimson Twins and Action Force Devilfish sold separately. Action Force! Action Force was headed into space, but suddenly things moved black. Out of the heavens came the Cobra Rattler. Action Force is under attack. Will the havoc with its twin cannons bring Cobra down to earth? Action Force, national hero. Havoc comes with driver, Rattler with pilot. Action Force. Action Force machines out on the rampage, heading the Action Force way. But the harbor cracks the plan, the sea covered, the Cobra is gonna play. Can the Dreadnoughts Thunder Machine escape the wrath of the Action Force hovercraft? Action Force, national hero. Hovercraft comes with pilot, Thunder Machine with driver. Action Force.
We now return to Figure Force. Storm Shadow. As always, the box first. Love it. Incredible. As you can see, I've not put his hood on, and I'll get to that later, just like before. But this artwork, I absolutely adore. It's so vivid, considering he's a mostly all-white costumed character. The momentum and the, I don't know, vibrancy, the motion captured in that image is awesome. It's kind of comic booky to an extent, but really graphical and beautifully illustrated. Was it created by hand, but digitally by hand? I absolutely love it. Storm Shadow flying through the air, double-sworded, throwing shurikens. Awesome. One of the, I don't want to say better, because they all have their job to do. And as I said, some I like more than others, and this is high up there on the ones that I have. And then onto the back, because this is a newer wave, it's away from last year, you get to see some of the other characters. So you've got Lady J on there, you've got Crocmaster, you've got Firefly, you've got Major Blood. He was an awesome figure. And then you've got Spirit, who was the best of last year. He is by far, yeah, he is the best G.I. Joe classified. Yeah, lovely. I love that this is updating each time a new wave comes, and then you can see the two Arashikage members going toe to toe. This iteration of Storm Shadow for me is wonderful. A slight bit of modernisation, but without compromising his original design. They've just slightly embellished it, but embellished it the right amount. For me personally, I can understand that some people want gloveless hands, because that's how he originally was, and don't need shurikens on his bandolier, but I do. That's how some images, and I know that he's just a full martial arts weapon expert, so he's going to have all of these weapons. But it's the attention to detail on a white figure that I love. The musculature across his whole body, including the garments, comes through, but then there's folds, there's wraps around his legs that have been dirtied, there's rips on the sleeves. The tempoed Cobra logo is beautifully done. There's like no issues, like QC wise. They have captured his intense, somewhat sinister eyes, as well as the shape of his, I'm going to call it a balaclava, or his, his gi mask. Again, you can get another head if you've got the colour change Zartan to give him a slightly different look, and you can pop the hood on. I'm not overly fussed with the hood, thus I don't have it. And then you can see his bow and arrow with the Arashikage clan added on, and his dual scabbards for his two different type of swords. I love it. Out of the two, as much as I love Snake Eyes, and he's a hero, Snake Eyes just isn't as strong in toy playability as much as Storm Shadow. The poses for Storm Shadow, absolutely second to none. You can see how much more over the few years their tech has improved to get some really killer poses, especially with this guy. Recreating the image from the front of the box, this is just how incredible the articulation has become for these figures. When I see an image on a box, I'm often hoping to recreate what the toy photographers have done to promote the figure, and it allows you to do it. And again, the image at the top of the box, faithfully recreated, just even removing a bit of the, kibble's not the right word, the weapons actually makes it a bit more streamlined and allows you to do these dynamic poses. Real ninjutsu, acrobatic, fluid actions and movements. The addition of the hood and making his bow and arrow the primary weapon, again, you can just switch up and give it the look that you desire for your own Storm Shadow. I'm not really fussed on the hood or the bow and arrow weapon. Later Storm Shadow, he was much more prolific with the bow and arrow, especially the Arctic version. But again, it's variety is the spice of life. It just shows how much you can do with one figure. And finally, to end on we have got them crossing swords. Some people think that the only way to solve a difference is to fight. Skeletor, from the Masters of the Universe, for example, his answer to every problem is fighting. He doesn't care who's right or wrong. He thinks that might makes right. Well, it doesn't. He-Man knows that. Even with all his power, he tries to avoid fighting. Fighting doesn't solve problems. Fighting only makes more problems. In later stories, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow looked past their rivalry and hatred and became friends and good colleagues. That's something good to know. And knowing is half the battle.